Hello everyone, I'm Heather and I'm here to talk about Shorty September. What? So, Shorty September is a readathon that Bert and Sean are running over at PaSTOry Time, and they have actually asked me if I want to help host it, which I immediately screamed in their face that I would do that because it sounds amazing. Like, they've just posted their announcement in TBR video now. I'll link it below. It's amazing. Like, I don't want to make it weird, but it's amazing. So now I'm gonna do the same thing because it's got me thinking, you know, it's like, what am I gonna do? So, Shorty September obviously runs in September. It's gonna be, I think, just the first to the last day of September. And it's short books. So Bert's like, what's a short book? Maybe like 200 or fewer pages. And, you know, I think it's pretty chill. Like, if it's 210 pages, it's still okay. Like, it's just sort of generally like short-ish, you know? Like, I guess your average book is about like 400 pages, so it's like, you know, like a half a book. Okay, and we pooled our minds together, Jedi mind meld, to come up with some prompts, and sort of Bert put them all out as shorts and everything, and then I sort of did my best to doodle them into a document, like, in work and my terrible, like, boring meetings this week, like my first week back from vacation, just like trying to doodle things together. Okay, I apologize for like the crappiness of the document, but I feel like it will work just as well if you want to be nerdy and like print it out and then like put in the book that you want to do for each prompt. Like, you can write it in. There's also a box under the title bit, which doesn't make any sense. It just looked weird without it. So you can just fill that in with your own doodles maybe, or like with the rules of the readathon, you know, like the dates, 100, you know, 200 pages or so. I don't know, whatever. Anyway. The document can be found in the link below, or also on Sean and Bert's video. They've linked it below as well. It's like a Google Docs doc that you can print out. Okay, so for this video, I was going to do my TBR for Shorty September, like the ones that I want to read for each of the prompts. But also, I thought maybe you don't read a lot of short ones, because I guess some people, you know, you tend not to. It's something to sort of get into. I thought if you want to do Shorty September but you're not really sure where to sort of start, I thought I'd give a recommendation book as well for each of the prompts. Because the books that I'm going to read for my TBR, I'm excited to read them, but I don't know if they're good yet. You know, like, I can't say, yeah, read this one, it's good, when I haven't read it yet. It could be crap. So I thought I'd do one book for each prompt, one where I'm going to read it in September, but also one that I've already read which fits the category and which I know to be good. I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible because ain't nobody got time to watch like a 40-minute video. Okay, ready? Go. So the first prompt is Shorty Shorts, or short shorts, right? So this is a book from the 70s or 80s, and for this one I'm going to read The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. So this one I've heard about a gazillion times. I think it was published like 1979, something like that. And it's just a bunch of tales. It's a bunch of like fairy tales, but retold in like a sort of dark gothic sort of way, which I'm super into. Everyone I've ever talked to about this book has said that it's absolutely amazing, and I've wanted to read it for ages, and I'm finally going to do it. So one book that I'm going to recommend for this category, which I read and loved, is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. So this one is like a bunch of little stories as well. It's like a bunch of little sort of vignette type things. And it is, I think, from 84? Yeah, from 1984. And it's mainly about this Latina girl named Esperanza and sort of her life growing up in Chicago. But it's also sort of about her, like, neighborhood and her sort of family and friends. And it's a bunch of little stories about them and her. And some of them are really, like, cute and sort of heartwarming or whatever. Some of them really heartbreaking. But it's really good. I definitely recommend. Okay, so the next prompt is Runway Fashion Shorts, which is a translated book, right? So for that one, I'm going to read Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. So this one, like, I have heard like good and bad things about it since picking it up and then investigating it a bit more. So one of the main characters in it is a trans person, and it being Japan and taking place in the 80s, so it takes place in 87, I think? Yeah, 87. The year I was born. It's meant to be. But it being Japan in the 80s, sort of like, take that for what you will. Like, the descriptions of the trans person in the book aren't going to be like as PC or as woke, like as they are, as we would expect now. But loads of trans people and LGBTQ people have said this book is really heartwarming and did like change their life. Like, it is still overwhelmingly positive response to the book. because despite it being Japan in the 80s, the trans character in the book is really warm-hearted and kind and like a 3D character. They're a real character, you know, and a real person and a good person, you know, and it's sort of like touched people who are trans and LGBTQ to sort of see such a good portrayal of a trans person in a book from Japan in the 80s. Do you know what I mean? So I'm gonna give it a read and let you know how I feel about it. I'm pretty excited, to be honest. I think it's gonna be really good. It's about, now, okay, Kitchen is two tales about mothers, transsexuality, bereavement, Kitchen's love and tragedy. So basically, I think the main character goes to move in with his friend, and the friend's mother is trans. And that's pretty much all I know. So we'll see. So the book that I'm gonna recommend that I thought was really good that would fit this category is Space Invaders by Nona Fernandez. So this one was sort of a bunch of different stories sort of linked together, a bunch of different classmates of this girl in like the 70s, I think, roughly. So it's in Chile during the Pinochet regime. And it was like a really deadly regime and like a coup and everything. And in that time, this girl, their classmate in school, disappeared because her dad sort of worked for the military or something. And they're sort of like talking about her and talking about sort of their memories from that time and sort of things that haunt them later on. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I had no idea really anything about this point in history in Chile until I sort of read this book and I started Googling it, and it's fascinating, and this book was gorgeous, so I recommend it. Okay, so the next prompt is Granddad shorts, and this is a book you've had for a really long time, right? So I got the audiobook for My Name is Why by Lem Sisse ages ago, I think probably before the pandemic, and I haven't gotten to it yet. I don't know why. Like, I'm really excited about it, so I know what the problem is. Hank, quiet. My dog now. He's such a diva. I don't know what his problem is. I think he just wants cooches. He just wants pets. He's going crazy in the corner. He's like, come pet me. Oh my god. Anyway, this book by Lem Sisse. So it's a memoir about a kid who grew up in care homes and like an adopted family in England. But it's more sort of a critique of the system, the sort of care system in England, everything like that. Like, he was Norman Greenwood for sort of the first 17 years of his life. And then after, I think, 6 years in care and sort of having an adopted family and everything, he got his birth certificate and found out his name's actually Lem Sisse because his mother was from Ethiopia, I think. And I think the memoir itself is sort of about being cut off completely from his culture and his identity and knowing nothing about himself, and sort of how he was raised in this sort of extreme sort of Englishness of the care system there. The back of the thingy, the back of the book blurb thing says, Sisse reflects on adoption, self-expression and Britishness, and in doing so explores the institutional care system, race, family, and the meaning of home. Like, I also saw a sort of interview thing or whatever, like a blurb on the Hay Festival site on their like YouTube thing where he was talking about it, and it sounds really good. So there's that. And then one book that I will recommend for the Granddad shorts one, like, I can't really say to you, you know, it's hard to recommend for this one, isn't it? Because it's like ones that you have. But I did think probably loads of people, they collect like little classics and bits, don't they? Thinking, oh, I'll get to that at some point. But then they just sort of sit on your shelf. And then when you eventually get to them, you kick yourself. You're like, this was so good, but I let it like linger on my shelf for ages. I've been sleeping on this like hit. So I was thinking things like, you know, Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Brilliant! I had this on my shelf for years. Never actually got to it. And as soon as I got to it, it's fantastic. Loads of adventure, okay? The characters are so ace. I had it like edge of my seat the whole time. Read it in like a day, okay? I know people say this is good, but like, because it's a classic, it just sits in the back, doesn't it? In your mind, you're like, oh, I'll read that sometime. Read it now. It's so good. If you had this in your house and you've had it for ages, do it for this prompt. Okay, another one that I was sleeping on. Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. So this is like a sequel, if you will, or like a sort of separate side thing to Jane Eyre. And it tells it from the story of the crazy wife, you know, like Rochester's like wife in the attic. It like tells her story in the Caribbean. And it sort of, to be honest, kind of ruined Jane Eyre for me. Like, you know, that's sort of bad, but also sort of good, you know? It made me sort of see Rochester and Jane Eyre and everyone in that book as the bad guy, even though in the book, obviously, they're not sort of supposed to be like that. Anyway, this was fantastic. This is another sort of thing that I just sort of got thinking, oh, I'll read it at some point. I've heard it's good. You know, it's like a classic or whatever. And then didn't read until ages later. And then finally when I got to it, I was like, oh, it's brilliant. I've been sleeping on that. So that's an idea as well. Okay, so the next prompt is Bermuda shorts, right? Okay, so this one is a book that takes place in another country. So I did talk about this one in my last video last week in like my haul of ones that I got at home in Seattle. And it is At Night, All Blood is Black by David Diop. And the idea is this guy, he's Senegalese and he's fighting with the French in World War I, I think, right? Yes. And he has a friend who's dying or something like that, and he begs for this guy to kill him. He's like, I'm in agony, and the guy doesn't have the guts to do it. He's like, he can't kill his friend. So then his friend dies in agony, right? And he feels really guilty about it, and it like messes with his mind and makes him go like a bit crazy, and he starts like taking out revenge on the Germans in crazy ways. Like every night he goes across the line, kills a German and takes his hand, and then he like brings the hand back, you know, like that like Schmiegel in The Ring, like my precious. He's like got all these hands. And there's like a bit where it says it's about like, oh yeah, peppered with bullets and black magic. Like they start to think like this guy who has all the hands, like all the people even on his side are like starting to fear him. They're like they think he's like a witch or like he's gone crazy. I've heard some really good stuff about that one. So anyway, the one that I've already read, which would meet this prompt, which I thought was phantasmic, is Testament of Mary by Colm Tobin. So this one was super good, and it's like really intense and really short and just really gorgeous. Like the idea is Mary, okay, the mother of Jesus Christ. He's just been crucified, and she saw everything and she was there and blah blah blah. But then she's quickly taken away by like Jesus fixers or whatever. It's like a sort of like retelling of biblical stuff that happened immediately after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and sort of this idea that Mary's not allowed to speak about it. She's not allowed to say what happened or how she feels, because her fixers have approved the narrative, you know, like they've got a thing that they're saying and they're passing on to the followers of what has happened, and she's not allowed to sort of like state her own narrative. She has to stick to like the party line. And she's sort of like squirreled away and hidden away in these like far off places and trying to live her life, but with this like intense weight of like watching her son die and like being silenced and stuff. So that was super good. I would recommend that. Okay, next prompt is half and half shorts. Okay, so this is one of my favorite kinds of prompts, right? You read a book and then watch the movie, or like you could read the book of like a movie you've already read, you know, you've read the movie and you know that it's based on a book or whatever, then read the book. So for this, I said about this one in my last video as well, because I got this book on my way to Seattle in the airport. It is Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. So I've obviously heard of the movie and seen snippets of it, but I've never actually seen the movie of this. And I know sort of roughly what it's about, but also I know that Truman Capote has written some really fucked up shit. So I'm wondering if this isn't like the princess sort of thing that I kind of always thought it was, because of like Audrey Hepburn and stuff like that. But maybe it's like slightly fucked up, I don't know. New York, 1940s, where the martinis flow from cocktail hour to breakfast at Tiffany's and nice girls don't. Except, of course, Holly Golightly. So super excited to finally get to this one and also to watch the movie. I think I have found it on Google Play. So maybe I'll make the kid watch it with me. I think that she would really like that. And then one I will recommend for this, right? A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. So this one is about, right, this guy in World War I who has a twitch, because it's basically PTSD, like before people have properly looked into what PTSD is. And he is a painter by trade, and he goes to this church out in the middle of nowhere in England to help them restore a medieval painting they found underneath the plaster in their church. And the sort of villagers and the rector of the church and the rector's wife and everyone around. They're really good characters and they're really funny, and it's like an enjoyable, like cute sort of romp, but also being like quite sort of psychologically deep. Like this guy's obviously like working through some stuff, some PTSD stuff, and also he's got a friend there who's working on a separate project related to the same church, where they're trying to find the body of like a 13th century knight or something in a field nearby, and that guy is also a soldier from the war and is also working through some stuff, and they like get to be mates and sort of hang out with each other. Anyway, the absolute ringer for this prompt for this book is the movie, which is from 1987, I think, and has an amazing young awkward Colin Firth. I think you can actually watch part of that movie on YouTube, so you should definitely do it. But if you can get like the full movie elsewhere, I would fully recommend this, okay? The movie is so awkward and amazing. I loved it so much. Okay, so the next prompt is Denim Shorts, which is a modern classic. And for that one, I'm going to read by Grand Central Station, I Sat Down and Wept by Elizabeth Smart. So I've heard amazing things about this and also terrible things about this. I think it's a bit like Marmite. You never sort of feel so-so about it. You either love it or hate it, which I'm cool with. This one basically, I think, is about a woman, I think it's from the 50s or the 40s, something like that, in New York. She falls in love with this writer just through his writing. And they sort of like strike up a conversation like via sort of letters and everything. And then he and his wife end up flying to New York to like meet her. And then I think from there, thus began one of the most extraordinary, intense, and ultimately tragic love affairs of our time. They never married, but Elizabeth bore George Barker 4 children, and their relationship provided the impassioned inspiration for one of the most moving and immediate chronicles of a love affair ever written. I'm down. I'm so down. Okay, one that I'm going to recommend for this, right? Okay, I was like, oh, what should I do? Like, I know loads of them. Which one should I do? And then I nailed it, right? Bonjour Tristesse by Francois Sagan. Okay, I read this as a teenager in high school, and I believe I read it behind my math book, right? Like, here's my math book open, like, spread like that, and then this is, like, placed inside while I'm reading it. And teenage me got such a kick out of this, right? Because it's like French. It's translated from French, and it's like really, like, I think it came over to an English sort of translation to America in like the 60s, I think, or something like that, and it was totally scandalous and amazing. It's about this girl, right? This teenage girl, or I think girl in her 20s, and her dad and his 2 mistresses, and there's like, you know, there's sensuality in it, there's sex in it. Like, this girl, she's sort of like looking at, you know, her dad dealing with his 2 mistresses, and she's got like really, you know, grown-up French sexual things to say. Oh my god, I absolutely loved the crap out of this. Like, obviously, for me and my experience with this book, it's like a rebel teenager, like wanting to, like, you know, see the world and see what's out there and be part of a wider, more adult world. So I think maybe if I was to read it again as an adult, maybe it would change my mind, you know, I might have like a more mature appreciation for the book. But I kind of don't want a more mature appreciation of the book. I kind of want this to forever exist in like 16-year-old me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to ever change. Anyway, I highly recommend it. Okay, the next prompt is Hometown Shorts, which is a book that takes place where you live, or is written by someone who's from where you live, or like is in some way related to where you live, right? So for this one, I'm stretching it a bit, but I'm going to go with The Cormorant by Stephen Gregory. This one takes place in North Wales. So I live in South Wales, and I think a lot of Welsh people would say that's 2 completely different places, but I feel like as a person who comes from a country that's thousands of miles wide, the difference between North Wales and South Wales is not that intense, so I'm saying that it's the same. Okay. This one I think is super creepy. Like, from what I get from it, I think it's like a kind of thriller, or like a sort of like creepy thriller, and it's from the 80s again. So I think we've established that I'm really into things from the 80s. It's about this family, right? They move to like a rural cottage, and I think it's a couple and like their baby or like their young kid or whatever, and they inherit the house, or like they take the house on for free, and the only stipulation is that they have to take care of this cormorant, like this kind of bird or whatever, until it dies. And they're like, okay, it's a weird request, but I'm down, whatever. But then it's like, but the bird is no tame pet, and within its natural state of wildness there is a malevolent intelligence and intent towards sharp, unexpected violence. Boom. Okay, and then for this one, hard to make recommendations as well, again, because I'm not where you are, and like loads of things are really specific to where you're living, obviously. Oh my god, can you hear my dog? Hank! Hank, what? God, he's such a diva, I swear to God. Anyway, so yeah, it's hard for me to make recommendations for this prompt, but I think like what I would do, or what I tend to do when I'm in the mood for something local, you could go to your library or your bookstore or whatever and ask them there for like novella or like short book recommendations by local authors. You know, they've always got like some sort of local section or whatever. So I guess just try that. Like I've got a bookstore near me on the corner that has like a special section just for authors that are from South Wales, and I hit it up all the time because there's so much good stuff in there that like big publishers don't sort of advertise and don't sort of put out there, but are so good. Okay, so the next one is Escort, and this is a book that's like genre bending, you know, like it doesn't fit into a genre, or it's like a bunch of genres in one, or like whatever. And for that one, I think I found a good one. The Mezzanine, right, by Nicholson Baker. So this one, I've no idea what possible genre this would be. I think it's just basically all the thoughts of a guy in one day. You know, like he goes to work and he like goes to a shopping center and he like eats a hot dog, and it's just basically like a run-on thing of like things he's thinking throughout the day, and then it ends. That's just the whole book. And I feel like how I've described it makes it sound super boring, but I've heard loads of amazing things about this and how weird it is. Says this is a story about those escapes from the office when you muse on greater things. Why does one shoelace always wear out before the other? Whose genius lies behind the folding spout on the milk carton? I don't think it's gonna be boring at all. I think it's gonna be fantastic, and I feel like it's gonna be one of those ones where I like write down loads of quotes. Like I sort of hit a quote and think, I need to save that. I need to write that down for like amusement later. Okay, so the one that I would recommend for this is The Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Maratha. So I have no idea what genre this fits into either. Like it's just weird. Like, does it fit into like a weird Japanese translated category? Is that a category? Anyway, this one is about a woman in Japan who works at a convenience store. And the convenience store is just like her life. She lives for the convenience store, and she's so good at being a convenience store worker. Like she's on top of things all the time. She's like really good at like managing her people and like doing like her food, and like she's really into details, you know, like basically if this was real, her convenience store would be the place where everyone would want to go. This would be the world's greatest convenience store because she's so good at it. But because she's like in her 30s, and being a convenience store worker is like something you do as a teenager in high school, or like in your 20s before you get a real job, you know, people aren't like accepting of her working at the convenience store. They're always like pressuring her, like, why are you still working at the convenience store? Is there something wrong with you? Like, you need to move on. Why are you still single? Your sister has a baby, you know, like you need to grow up. You're in your 30s now. Why do you still work at the convenience store? So she's like pressured then to like date this guy she doesn't like, who's super weird, and to quit the convenience store, and then she just loses it. She just loses her like whole point in life. She's like, without the convenience store, I have nothing. And she just doesn't shower. She doesn't wake up. Like, like her life is not worth living without the convenience store. And she's just super weird. And this book is super weird. And I loved the crap out of it. And I would highly recommend. Next prompt is Boxer Shorts, which is a comfort read, right? So I had a hard time sort of thinking about this, like, what do I want in my comfort read? Like, do I want something that I know is definitely going to be good, so I'll read an author that I've read before? Or do I want it to be just something that's going to be like cozy, you know, like not too intense? Or do I want it to be something like a bit sort of mundane, so it's not like too, like, you know, taking over my thoughts and blah, blah. Anyway, I think I've settled on Last Night in Lobster by Stuart Onan. So this book is basically just about a Red Lobster that's shutting down. And this is about the last shift of everyone working at the Red Lobster before it shuts down. So manager Manny DeLeon still needs to navigate a tricky last shift with a near mutinous staff and the final onslaught of hungry retirees, lunatics, and office parties. I think it's just going to be funny and sort of cute, you know, and a bit weird. Like, I think that's a, you know, a safe bet. I think that one's going to be really good, so I've picked that one. But the one that I'm going to recommend, right, is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. And it's quite thick, but I've checked it. Checked the back, and it is only 196 pages, so it still fits in, right? So this one, I don't know if you've seen the movie, because the movie was super good. This could be another one like as well, where you read the book and then watch the movie. So the movie was super good. It's about this guy who lives in like a fantasy place. It's like a sort of fairy tale. It's like a cute comfort fairy tale, right? With like a princess and like a prince and blah blah. So this kid, he lives in a fantastical place called Wall, where the village mans this wall into like a fantasy world, right? And this guy is tasked, this like old man is tasked with not letting anyone through the wall. So this guy gets through the wall and he goes into this fantasy world, and he meets a girl, this like princess or whatever, and then he comes back home. And then like 9 months later, he gets a baby with his name on it left at the wall, right? So now he's got this kid who is apparently from Wall, but is obviously his kid, you know, like looks like him and everything. So then that kid needs to now go into Wall to impress this girl that he likes at school or whatever. And then from there, like catastrophe and adventure and like really good comforting sort of stuff. Like there's these 7 siblings in like that fantasy realm that are all fighting for the crown because the dad's about to die, and they're all like dastardly and like trying to kill each other because it's like the one will inherit the kingdom who's like left alive, you know. And there's like this evil witch who gets like youth and stuff by eating stars, which are people. So she's like hunting down this fallen star, which is also a beautiful woman, so that she can eat the beautiful woman, so you can take, anyway, there's a whole plethora of amazing characters and awesomeness, and I cannot recommend this book enough. I loved the absolute crap out of it. Okay, so next prompt, sorry, I'm pretty sure this is a very long video, but second to last prompt, ready? Gym Shorts, which is a book that gets your pulse racing. And I think for this one, it could be like one that makes you angry, or like a thriller, like scary or suspense or whatever. I'm going with suspense, right? I'm going to read The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. So I liked Gillian Flynn's other one, like Gone Girl or whatever, and I saw that she did this one as well, and it's little. I was like, I'll just grab that up. It's a young woman who's like a fake psychic. She makes her living as like sex worker / like con artist psychic, right? And she meets this woman who has a 15-year-old son and who's moved into this house, right? Which she's pretty sure is haunted. And I think she's come to this psychic now to help her out. Haunted house. I'm down, right? And then the one that I recommend for this one, the one that I loved, is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. So this one is about like this guy and his family, like his wife and his teenage daughter. He's like obsessed with the ancient Britons in like a really gross sort of way, like in a sort of Britain first sort of way, like agoraphobic and anti-immigrant and like, you know, oh, pure British society and like shit like that. So he takes his family like on their break, on their vacation. He sends them, like all of them, to go and live for like a couple weeks with this university group who's studying the lives of ancient Britons, and they're like recreating it in a lot of ways. Like they're cooking over a fire and like wearing ancient British clothing and like, you know, ancient British like houses and stuff like that. And he's like really into it, but obviously the teenage girl's like, this is the shittest vacation ever. But she starts talking to the university kids that are there, and she starts to like have a different perspective of her life, and she sort of starts to see her dad in the way that they see him, like as like violent and angry, you know, stuff like that. And she starts to sort of act up, and he's like not having it. Anyway, part of one of the things that they recreate in this sort of ancient British like mock-up of life is the ghost wall, which was like an ancient British custom where they like make a wall out of human like skulls and bones and stuff, and then do a human sacrifice to like christen the wall to protect them. So they have to recreate, and obviously they're not going to have a real sacrifice, right? Or are they? So good. Just saying. Last prompt. Ripped Shorts, which is a slasher or a murder mystery. So for this one, I talked about this one in my last video as well because I got this one in America. I'm going to read Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. So I read Stephen Graham Jones' other one, Only the Good Indians. Sorry, had a brain fart. And that one was really good. So loads of people have like started like branching out with his other ones, you know, like his backlist. And loads of people have said this one is good. And I think it's basically just mannequins come alive and kill people. Yeah, mannequins come alive and kill people. I'm in, I'm excited, right? Okay, for this one, I've got 2 recommendations, right? Depending on like your level of slasherness. Like, if you're not into horrors, like, literally at all, I've got, like, a sort of, like, mild recommendation, okay? So, Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle is just more sort of unsettling and creepy in, like, a light way. Very enjoyable way, but not, like, super scary and not, like, you know, edge of your seat, like, gory or anything like that. It's just sort of, like, unsettling and a bit creepy. This girl and her sister are living in this house without their family because something has happened to their family, you know, and they sort of just live normal lives, but, like, the villagers, like, don't like them and don't trust them because of something that's happened to them in their family. Like, I will say it meets the category of having some murders, just put that out there. But I would say this is like a mild version, but super good. So the less mild version, the extreme version, if you will, I would recommend In the Miso Soup by Ryu Murakami. This one's total slasher, right? But also deeply philosophical, which I was not prepared for and I did not expect, but which made it amazing. So in Japan, in Tokyo, this guy, this local guy, works as a guide for Americans and Britons and Australians, whatever, that come to Tokyo looking to make the most of, like, the sex trade, you know, to, like, go around and go to strip clubs and, like, get hookers and, like, do drugs and blah, blah, blah. So he sort of advertises secretly, you know, underground, his specialty, his expertise in being a guide in this. And this American guy comes to him looking for services, but he's, like, super creepy. Like, everything about him exudes creepiness. And the guide's like, okay, it's possible that he's, like, gonna kill us all. But then he does actually turn into, like, a slasher and starts slashing, killing people. But that's not actually what the book is about. Like, there's a lot of, like, gore and slashing and craziness. But it's more about, like, a critique of modern Japanese society and, like, it compared to pre-World War II Japanese society, and also it compared to, like, American and sort of Western society, you know, and, like, the pros and cons of things. Like, it's very deep and I love the shit out of it, but also it's a slasher. Okay, that's my list, my TBR and my recommendations. Like, if you have any thoughts about any of this, please let me know. Like, if you're gonna do Shorty September, please let me know. Tell me, like, the ones that you've picked. Like, if you're gonna do a TBR, like, tell me, like, put it in the comments which one you're gonna do, because I'm gonna watch it. I think the best thing about this readathon is that I'm gonna watch all these TBRs and just increase my list of books to read, like, exponentially. I'm so excited. If you have anything to say about the books that I've said, please let me know. If you have any questions about the readathon or anything, please let me know. Super excited. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Bye, 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 bye.